The world rarely stops in its tracks for political reform. But when it does, it's because something truly extraordinary has taken place, something that challenges the norm, breaks through decades of stagnation, and forces even the skeptics to sit up and take notice. In recent months, a series of unexpected reform victories have unfolded across the globe, and the impact has been nothing short of stunning. From anti-corruption crackdowns to sweeping environmental legislation and game-changing social policies, these reforms have not only transformed the countries in which they were born but have also sent shockwaves through international politics. Take, for instance, the surprise legislative overhaul in a South American nation long plagued by political instability and rampant corruption. Against all odds, a coalition of young lawmakers, some with no political experience, managed to pass a historic transparency law that mandates real-time disclosure of government spending and prohibits private donations to political campaigns. This reform, previously thought impossible due to entrenched elite resistance, passed with overwhelming support. What stunned the world even more was the domino effect it created. Within weeks, similar draft bills surfaced in neighboring countries, with citizens flooding the streets in support. Social media turned into a digital battlefield where people demanded accountability and cheered for reformers, creating a kind of political contagion. In another part of the world, a small European country made headlines when it passed the most aggressive climate action law in modern history. What started as a grassroots campaign led by high school students eventually gained traction in the halls of power. After years of lobbying, protesting, and creative civil disobedience, the government finally caved under the pressure of public support. The new law mandates a complete transition to renewable energy by 2035, bans fossil fuel cars by 2030, and enforces heavy penalties on corporations that exceed carbon limits. Overnight, the country transformed from a quiet player in the global climate arena to a bold leader. Experts were taken aback, not because the policy passed, but because of the speed and decisiveness with which it did. World leaders are now racing to match or counter the policy, and climate activists everywhere have found renewed momentum. In Asia, one of the most rigid and hierarchical societies stunned the world when it introduced sweeping labor reforms after a nationwide strike that brought the economy to a grinding halt. For decades, workers in this country had been voiceless, trapped in exploitative conditions. But the strike, led by a coalition of workers, students, and progressive politicians, ignited a conversation no one could ignore. Within months, the government passed a set of laws that guaranteed minimum wage increases, regulated working hours, and, for the first time, allowed for the formation of independent labor unions. The most astonishing part: the reforms were not met with widespread political resistance. They were welcomed, even by some of the very corporations that had long profited from the old system. Analysts say this may be the beginning of a larger economic shift in the region, where worker welfare is no longer an afterthought but a cornerstone of growth. But not all reform victories came through protest or legislation. In a deeply conservative Middle Eastern nation, a grassroots women's rights movement achieved the unthinkable, full legal recognition of gender equality in the workplace and education. Years of underground organizing, quiet advocacy, and strategic international alliances finally bore fruit when the country's ruling council passed a decree mandating equal pay, outlawing workplace discrimination, and investing in programs that promote women's leadership. The reform stunned the region and the world, not just because of the content of the policy, but because it came from a government previously known for its rigid stance on gender roles. What's even more extraordinary is that the decree was followed by actual enforcement, with companies quickly adapting and women reporting real changes in their daily lives. These reform victories are not isolated miracles. They are interconnected flashes of hope in a time when global trust in institutions is at an all-time low. They reflect a broader awakening, a recognition that change is not only possible but urgent. People are no longer content with waiting for the perfect leader or the ideal political moment. They are pushing, organizing, and demanding action, often from the bottom up. And when reforms do happen, they do more than fix broken systems. They inspire movements across borders, remind the powerful that they're being watched, and prove to the world that progress is not a myth. What makes these reforms truly extraordinary is not just their content but the courage behind them. The courage of students who skipped school to fight for the planet. The bravery of whistleblowers who risked everything to expose corruption. The resilience of workers who walked out not knowing if they'd ever return to their jobs. the determination of women who refused to be silenced. In each case, ordinary people sparked extraordinary change, and in doing so, they stunned the world. As more countries watch these stories unfold, one thing becomes clear: the age of passive politics is over. The future belongs to those who demand it, and these reform victories are only the beginning.